All right, we will, at 1 o'clock, we will call the special meeting for the Board of Selectmen to order. Our first order of business, I think would be appropriate, as Mary suggested, for us to have the tour, to begin with the tour. And Beth really sends her regrets. She's really, really ill. She was ill last night, and she is in bed at this point in time, but she had intended to attend, but she won't be able to get here today because she is ill. So I think we'll start with who we have. There's 4 of us here.
Yep.
Do you want to maybe introduce ourselves?
Sure.
Everybody knows who everybody is.
Sure.
You guys want to start?
I'll start with Mika Cardozo, the Deputy Selectman here in Woodbridge, and
Joe Christo, Board of Selectmen.
Dwight Rowland, Board of Selectmen.
Go ahead, Brad.
Brad Parsons, Building Maintenance.
Go ahead, Fua.
Pua Ford, Government Access TV.
With me,
Yeah.
Charles Berger, Historical Society.
Okay, Sandy Stein, Board of Selectmen.
Lisa Flaherty, Woodbridge Historical Society. Joanna Kulas, resident.
Mary Dean, Amity Woodbridge Historical Society Vice President.
Nancy Mall, a volunteer.
Our textiles person, for those of you.
I am the textile extraordinaire.
And she gave us a great tour.
Oh my God.
She gives a great
She's
tour.
awesome. Oops. Barbara Baldwin, I'm the treasurer. And Mickey, excuse me.
Vicky's sister, and I'm a board member.
Muffy and Barb Hagan-Smith are also coming as well. They're right behind me.
excellent.
And Don is on his way up Amity Road, you know what that's like. And Alexia will also join us when she's finished with her class.
And Tony?
And Tony Genovese, I'm the Finance Director and Administrative Officer for the town. And minutes.
Oh, you're in minutes?
I am.
Okay. First order of business is to invite everybody to have a cookie left over from Christmas. And the Christmas party on Sunday. And thanks to Nancy Moe, who said, we should save some of these cookies for the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Thank Nancy.
We'll take up some water, though. I know.
Okay, so if you all would perhaps let me know if there's anything in particular you need to have us tell you about, and otherwise we'll just give you the standard tour. We can all chime in with our respective interests.
Okay. Maybe as we go around, Mary, if there are things that you want to point out to us that need attention, or that, whether it's immediate or it's, over the next couple of years, you could also explain to us where the Good to Great grant comes in and where the location of the bathroom and the kitchen will be and what will that take, so that we have a context for it.
Thank you. That's fine. We're also expecting Rebecca Harlow, who's one of our grant writers, so she can help with that if anybody has any questions, or Alexia or me. Okay, so you're standing in the kitchen. The floor underneath you is the only floor in the house that is not original to its original location. This kitchen was, of course, updated when we got the house in 1973, and what you see here is original because they had, simply sealed the back wall, the hearth out, sort of put the stove and everything in front of it, laid on a new floor when they put the baseboard heating in, I think. I'm trying to figure this out myself, but it had a new floor. So they took this floor up, replaced it with woods from the same time coeval that were in the outbuilding, what is now the caretaker's cottage, I believe it came from that. So these are all original for the time, original to the site, just not original to this room. Everything else that you see, as far as I know, is unchanged from 1772. You know how that is, but remarkably unchanged. We were very happy to have this hearth in place, together with a lot of hearth cooking implements that were just stuffed back there. That is not particularly unusual. We have a beehive oven here that was, during the course of the alterations of the building, bricked up in order to provide enough space for the flue, for the central heating. The society wanted to enlarge our hearth cooking activities several years ago, so we invested in having that reconstructed. It's done
Functional.
Entirely, it's functional, we use it for every one of our.
We baked bread yesterday.
Yeah, we don't have any of that left.
It was expensive, it was about $3,000, but we figured that it was well worth the
Yeah.
opportunity. And we've been making pizzas and stuff, which really draws a lot of people. I can tell you that with the hearth cooking, we have drawn a ton of people every time we have hearth cooking. It's unbelievable. And that's actually how we got Mickey on our board, because she's really into hearth cooking. And so that's another opportunity for us to have cooking classes and things like that, because people are really interested in hearth cooking. So
That was one of the impetuses for the Good to Great grant, which is designed for organizations that are at a point in their evolution, in their accomplishments, in their outreach, that they can go from good to great. And so you have to have a programmatic projection in order to indicate how you're going to expand your programming. And one of our projections was to expand our hearth cooking, to include hearth cooking classes. No hearth cooking classes are comparable activity. It takes place in this region. We partner with the Orange Historical Society when we do these things. We have a good partnership regionally with the other historical societies. And here's Don Menzies to take over.
So what? Take over.
Take over the tour.
What do you want to know? If I don't know, I'll make it up.
That makes for the best tour of all. I was just telling you about the kitchen. What did I miss?
Well, maybe you should point out that that's where our Good to Great grant is going to be, the renovation is going to be behind me in here.
1850. One of the Darling descendants, I think it was Charlie Bishop, took a barn from the back of the parking lot, and like they did so often back then, they moved stuff. He moved the whole barn up and he tacked it on the back end of the house. And that became their summer kitchen. Instead of having a fire here during the summers and sweating to death, they had a fireplace back there. Kept this house cooler.
Access this way.
And it was accessed through that door. When the society took over, well, the town bought it and the society started maintaining the house in 73, 4, 5, whenever it was, the caretaker apartment was formed then. Historical Society paid to have the caretaker apartment built. So that summer kitchen became a small apartment, at which point this door was blocked off to us. It was part of the caretaker apartment. Subsequently, through the years, we had a Elsie Ford. I don't know if anybody remembers Elsie Ford, who was a generationally first generation Woodbridgian. Her family, she gave us a nice little endowment when she passed away. We built our archives room here. So we opened this room up to the society and blocked it off to the caretaker. They got a little smaller there.
Went upstairs. We did the upstairs.
And we did an upstairs room that was unfinished, so they lost a room, they gained a room. That's what happened. So this was our archives room until the probate vault opened up to us, and now most of our important archives are in the best spot they can be in, a climate-controlled, very safe vault up at the town hall. We still have some other things here to move up there, but the most important things have all gone up at this point.
So is this vacant now? This room?
This room? You need an apartment?
We just had a party. When you have a party at your house,
Far from vacant.
when you have a party at your house, you always stuff things in the courtyard.
But that is the room.
Now you know the secret.
That will be the
That will become, you know, that commercial kitchen that we need.
Also, part of the Good to Great grant is the proposal that we have a mist-suppression, fire suppression system installed insofar as we can, the ground floor here as far as we can, in many rooms as we can. But particularly, of course, because we're going to be increasingly using the fireplace.
Yeah. And
the building.
Did you already say the fireplace have been completely relined? This chimney
Oh, I
stack
didn't
only?
get to
There are 2 chimney stacks. This one has been lined with kind of state-of-the-art stuff that they're doing now. They spray an epoxy cement, high-temperature epoxy and cement up and down like until they fill every nook and cranny in the flue. And so we can safely use the fireplace now. Also, at Historical Society expense, we opened up the beehive. So we're a fully functioning hearth cooking fireplace now. And we feel safe about having fires in this stack. But the mist suppression system, the nice thing about that is that instead of soaking Thomas Darling's own personal chair that he sat in, if there's a fire and a spray system came out, it helps preserve the furniture yet suppress the fire. So it's, again, kind of a state-of-the-art thing that we're
Could you repeat what is everyone going to be used for?
This room is the one that's going to be turned by the Good to Great grant. It's going to be transformed into a prep kitchen. That again is part of the expansion of the use of the building.
You didn't say
We need-
caretaker, did you?
No.
No, it's in this building that's attached. So the original house was this, and then we have this attached building. When we attached the building, a lot of work had to be done to it. The whole inside is new, so there's nothing historic on the inside of that building.
It's an apartment.
The exterior wall had to be completely redone on the end, I think maybe twice already by now because it's exposed. We had to pay to have a basement area dug out, so it was an enormous amount of work that was done to create.
It's
the-
on a crawl space,
That's
Joe.
why it
It's
cost
not a full basement.
$40,000 or something to do it even in 1973.
Yeah.
Big expensive.
Sorry, I got here late. Can I just add
Oh, hi.
something to the mist suppression system? It's not for this grant, because it wasn't the money in there, and we also wanted to try it out. It is not meant to be for the entire house, so there will not be nozzles put in everywhere. There's 6 of them. They will be in here and directed at various places towards the fireplace, also in the front room, in the kitchen itself, and also in the caretaker kitchen, because having a person live there and be running a stove and those appliances is actually the biggest risk for a fire here. And so the sink is designed to be redone. The sink itself's not part of the grant, but putting the fire mist suppression system, because they come, you can have them as part of the faucet, where a piece breaks off, and so it uses the water supply and then sprays directly the mist aimed at the stove, which is the most likely source. So that's where the fire mist suppression system, at least for this grant, is designed to go. If that's something that's a successful thing, then maybe eventually look into doing it in other parts of the museum, but
Was
not
this
right now.
all, I'm sorry, was this all outlined in terms of in submitting for the grant, in other words, prior to?
Yes, some of the details are missing because the grant itself, the state limits you to 150 words for this box and that sort of thing, but outlined in our proposal from the fire mist suppression system.
Thank you.
Yeah, we also walked through the whole area with the State Historic Preservation Officer in charge of this program and had a chance to discuss it in more detail. He thought we could do a little more in the ADA way, which is good news for us. We'll have to wait and see how
What
it
come from
goes,
that.
right? Once we really get a builder.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Was there, part of the grant was part of updating the bathroom as well?
Yeah, we can show them that when we go in there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what you guys had covered. So
Yeah, we had covered
Just doing
that.
one run at a time.
Yeah, you'll see the bathroom upstairs, it's definitely not ADA compliant, and really is not suited
Not meant
for
to
a very heavy
Not-
usage,
yeah.
really, so it's been,
When
It's pretty
central,
limiting.
when plumbing came into this house, 30s, 40s, I'm not sure when, they put in a bathroom, and that's what's there now. So it's sort of become part of the social history of the house.
Sure.
And we don't want to rip out the old faucets, the old tub, and the old toilet. and-
Toilets. I
Toilet's
mean, it's
classic,
historic,
you gotta-
it's not 18th century, but it's historic as far as bathrooms go. I feel history when I go in.
we all cry when it's flush.
So does everybody else. They go, oh, what's this?
So you'll show us the location of where the bathroom will be then?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds
It
great.
is, we're just saying that.
Okay,
Okay, shall we take?
So, Nikki, do you want to walk through the pantry and into the parlor?
okay.
Anything like this, even a Cape Cod style house like my wife and I live in just down the street on 1880 that she lived in, but had a room that was better than the others. And in this room, you can see the paneling over the fireplace is of the best design. There's wainscoted paneling all the way around. You won't see this in any other room. You also won't see these floors. We think they're chestnut, maybe oak, it's hard to tell, but they're uniform, narrow width, which was very unheard of in the Revolutionary War period. Most houses, unless you were extremely wealthy, were the wide board floors that you'll see in the rest of the house. So we know this is the room that Darling entertained in. And he had a lot of cool friends, a lot of Yale connections.
He graduated with Benjamin Woodbridge, for which the town is named, And in the class that he tutored was Ezra Stiles, who became the president of Yale.
And a good friend, lifelong friend of Darling's. We have evidence that Stiles stopped here occasionally when he
And he
was...
spoke at his funeral.
The chair behind Sandy and Mika there is the Benjamin Woodbridge chair. That was the pulpit chair in the First Congregational Church in Woodbridge that Ben Woodbridge sat in every Sunday before he gave his long, tiresome sermons. It was donated to the society by his heirs many years later, along with a couple other small pieces of furniture. So we have some Ben Woodbridge stuff here too, which is kind of cool. So that wasn't originally in the house, but this chair was. Thomas brought this chair with him from New Haven when he moved out of town and up here. It's assigned Francis Trumbull, low back Windsor chair, very similar to the ones that the Continental Congress guys sat in to sign the Declaration. And this guy, Roger Sherman, actually signed all three important founding documents, the only one who did. And he and, of course, Darling were acquaintances, probably friends in town. He was, of course, an ardent supporter of the Revolution. Thomas was not initially so. He wasn't a full-blown Tory, but Darling, like actually Benjamin Franklin, up until the very end, fought hard to keep the monarchy. Franklin believed that a well-run monarchy with good people in Parliament and all that, if it were the right people, it was the best form of government available. He, of course, was shamed in England when he tried to get recognition for the American colonies, so much so that he was totally dissatisfied, came back, and of course the rest of his history as far as Ben Franklin's concerned. But they were friends. I don't know if Franklin was here. Muffy, do you know?
I think they just corresponded.
Yeah, when Darling lived in New Haven, I don't know if you already know this, sorry if it's repetitious. Darling moved here when he was a little tad from Newport, Rhode Island, and they lived on the Green. His family lived on the Green in New Haven. Thomas did after he graduated and married and started raising a family right on Elm Street. All those houses are long gone. But so he knew guys like Roger Sherman and Benedict Arnold. The guy that made the clock in the hallway that you'll see, Isaac Doolittle. We're all friends of his. He was a merchant, he was a tutor, he was, a justice of the peace. Lots of things. Very prominent man in his day. But he was also first and foremost a merchant. He was involved in that triangle of commerce between London, the West Indies, and here. Though he never was in the slave trade, he imported and exported other stuff. So whether this chair came from Philadelphia on a ship and he liked it and bought it, or whether, as the urban legend is, that Roger Sherman gave it to him, we'll probably never know. But it's one of the most valuable pieces in the house because it's in its original finish, because it's signed on the bottom by the maker, and just, hen's teeth in terms of finding those. So we have Darling's original desk, we have his original clock, and maybe one or two other pieces. His socks. We have Thomas Darling's socks.
His shirt.
And his shirt.
With his initials on them. I don't know if Roger Sherman and Darling ended up as friends because they ran against each other for mayor of New Haven. And Roger Sherman beat Darling badly.
So I have a question about this door. So is this the official entrance into the house?
Well, that's not the front of the house. Unlike most colonial houses that face the road, at the time it was even before it was Litchfield Turnpike, it was just a cart path through the woods. This is the front of the house, and if you get out here and see that front door, you'll see the difference.
Got it.
So there was always a porch on the house. We have a map that came with the archives from British Baldwin showing sort of a bird's eye view of the property in about 1800, and it does show this house with a front porch on it. So it's always had, this is probably the third front porch that's been put on the house. So those two doors, both of them are the old Dutch double doors that you can open the top half and keep riffraff, including pigs and cows, from coming in during the summer while getting the breeze. The front door is a very special double door, paneled on both sides, again to show that Darling had some money, had some wealth.
Well, and it's what they used to call the coffin door because it's extra wide. And that allowed for a coffin or a barrel to be rolled in.
Which is on the front door, which is odd because there's a front hallway here. Most old houses have the staircase coming straight up in front of you, so the coffin door is on the side, because you
Right.
could never make the corner coming in the front door.
Architecturally,
But here, you can come in the front door with the coffin.
and architecturally, that's unusual for this time period,
Yes.
1770. This is more of what was more popular in the federal period after the Revolution, a center hallway with 2 chimney stacks.
Yes,
This is
very
still
unusual.
colonial times, and so double chimneys, 8 fireplaces in this place. You know, 1 in every room. It's pretty unusual. Darling could show his wealth. He was still close enough to the city that he could still be a justice of the peace. He owned a family of slaves, which he brought with him out here. But the minute the new state of Connecticut made it legal to free your slaves, Darling petitioned the general court to do that and received permission to free his slaves, which he did.
1777.
Thank you. Couldn't come up with the
And we
date.
have the manumission papers in our.
That, again, part of the archives that came from Bernice Baldwin to us. He didn't let them go into the world because he knew that they couldn't prosper. And who knows what would have happened to them. They had, I think, 4 or 5 children. 5 children?
They had a baby, which was freed with the parents. The 4 girls lived in the house.
And they were not
they
free.
remained
Until
with
they
the family
matured.
until they were 25, which was the law.
Right.
And the reason I think, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
the reason I think that they did that was because Timothy and his wife Chloe, these were the 2 slaves, couldn't sustain a family of 7.
So they continued here.
So they stayed with the family.
Whether they were paid or not, we don't know. I don't think we have records of that.
We know, though, that the family lived in a house that was still here. The Richard Sperry house, they think that they
Well,
lived in.
that's where it gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
On that same map I was telling you about, the bird's eye view that showed the property, that does, right behind this house, it does say old house. So we know there was a Sperry house, it was not to be confused with Richard Sperry of 150 years prior with the Regicides, but another Sperry house that might have been here that they lived in. They also might have lived for some of the time up in the second floor.
Upstairs, absolutely.
And additionally, just in terms of the slave history of this house, apparently Abigail's parents' slaves were also freed and taken in here for a
When
while.
her father died, it seems as if she may have acquired Jack and Sabine, and Jack and Sabine were freed immediately by Abigail. And they stayed in New Haven, but when they became very old, in 1785, she had them come back here. She nursed them, she kept them right here in the house with her, and when they died, she and her 2 living siblings paid for their funeral.
Are they in Grove Street? They probably wouldn't have gone to
Well, I
Grove Street.
can't find them.
Yeah,
And-
well, we don't know where they are.
That's a research that we're working on.
So anyhow,
I want to add something about the house and the older house that was on the property here. There's a very good chance, because it doesn't make sense otherwise, the support beams, and they're mostly on that side of the house, are what we call chamfered, big, huge beams, which were meant to be exposed. They came from an older house. So the only reason they would have used these probably late 17th century, maybe very early 18th century beams as support beams down here is if they were here. You wouldn't have brought them from
Right.
someplace else. So
No salvage
there
houses.
is these huge, beautiful, chamfered, completely intact beams that support the floor in there, make the history of this house then even older because it incorporates older wood and older beams from a prior structure.
I think
And
the
that's-
jail cell.
we really have a cool basement.
They're on that side. They're in that room with the jailed cell. But you don't bother to chamfered means that you're carving it out and making it look pretty. You don't do that for a basement. You do that back in the
Where you're going to see it.
in the 1600s when you didn't have plaster. So.
Yeah. which is a
But this
decorative
house
feature.
also has built-ins. It has closets. It was way ahead of its
And
time.
they were taxable items. Remember, the British were taxing glass, closets, and the number of
Don't
stories
get
in
any
a
ideas.
house. So
Okay.
Doors.
when we go upstairs, you'll see that it's the slanty of the gambrel or the mansard, however it's
gambrel.
It's a gambrel.
And because it was roof, it was not considered a story. So this is a
One-story
one-story
house.
Story and a half, they might have
house.
called it.
But for tax purposes.
One story. Right, well, as you can see, we can do this all day.
Yeah, right.
So, but we are conscious of your time, so.
Well, as you go through the hallway into the next room, look to the right and see the original front doors, and to the left and see Thomas Darling's grandfather clock. It is however, the Steinway, thank you, upright grand piano, the older you get, the harder it is, was given to us, was bought new by the Baldwin family in 1880, whatever, and has been in the house for its entire existence.
Don, one of the questions we had is as we walk through the different rooms, if you could share with us anything that is needed from a preservation perspective in each of the rooms, or is everything exactly the way you want it and you just rotate the collection? How does that work?
Well, preservation kind of means that if it ain't broke, we don't fix it.
Okay.
And we try to use the best available materials and things when that happens. Nothing is coming to my mind right now that is, except spots on the ceiling, I guess.
Yeah, for inside the house, for the main house, there's not a ton of things that we, because as Don said, you know, we don't want to, if we can do something about a spot, we will, but it's not if it means destroying the older plaster kind of a thing. We potentially, though, which we still have to solve, may have a problem in the attic with the roof and some sort of leak around a window or a roof.
Yeah, the new roof seems to have a leak sometimes.
So that's a problem. So that's not a preservation issue, but that, and if that is we're trying to sort that out with rainstorms, which, you know, we're here, somebody's here every day, but it's a different person, so it's a little bit difficult for us to also figure that out. But if in fact it's the roof, as you guys know, the roof is just a few years old, and then the town would, Tony's somewhere, where's Tony? May want to be contacting the roofer, because if in fact it's the roof has failed in some way in 3 years, obviously that's bad. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
But upstairs you'll see that there's paint chipping off some of the walls and the doorways.
The ceiling.
Mostly from ice dams of a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got nailed.
You know, there's a back room here that we also have as storage that if we could redo as display space, you know, would be, so it's not quite a preservation thing, but you'll see that's in a state of not being painted and the plaster not looking in, so.
And you can't all get into that room at once.
No, you can look in that room.
But we have more things up in the attic that we haven't been able to bring down because we just don't have the space there.
Sure.
So- And there's some beautiful things up in the attic that we'd really
Okay.
love to display.
Okay.
We do have a vast, vast collection of textiles, and I have the honor, that I kind of fell into, of the opposite. This happens to be the dress that I found last week. There's lots of stuff up there, and the special thing about this, it's dated. It belonged to Elizabeth Royce, who married Charles Hitchcock, and their son was the first selectman of Woodbridge. The dress was worn on March 6, 1872. It's museum quality, pristine. This could go to the Met, as is. We have lots of them. And we would like a space, as you say, for us to have a revolving display.
Right.
We pull them out down here, and Nancy's been fantastic with preserving, cleaning, sorting, because, I mean, the textiles alone in this house are
Some that have been here for a long time, and many have been donated through the years from Woodbridge families.
But Thomas Darling stockings and nightshirt are, you know, we've had experts in, and they're amazed.
Show them that sampler right behind you too.
Oh, the samplers, we have 8 samplers, and they are extremely valuable because they have names and age dates. This one happens to be one made by that young woman up there, Sarah.
Clark.
Sarah Clark, Ellie and
The painting.
May's
Oh, sorry.
daughter. And it's not in fabulous condition, but because of the age and the fact that we have her portrait, we have her mother and father's portraits,
You have her sister and
and her sister and brother-in-law. That becomes now a collection, which enhances the value of everything.
It doesn't look very happy though. Right till you see mom in the hallway.
told not to.
I'm not sure they had two.
I'm not sure they had teeth.
A lot of times they didn't have teeth.
There is a collection that we are really dying to display. When I was cleaning up in the attic, we actually have a number of hoop skirts, which I thought it was one, and actually I pulled out one, I pulled out a second one, and I pulled out about 5 of them, and they are actually within 20 or 30 years of each other. And so you can actually see the style changes.
The evolution
of the
over
skirts.
time.
And it's phenomenal that we would have that whole history.
And we also have the corsets that were handmade that are exquisite. They go with them.
I will not be modeling those.
Actually,
I don't think any of us will.
I wanted to
Really
ask
try.
actually about the farmland out there.
Okay.
Is
Sure.
Ethan
Ethan's here.
Ethan?
Front and center.
I have a question about the land
Yeah.
that you're farming out here.
Yeah.
Was this the first land that you farmed or the?
I farmed both of them simultaneously when I moved here. They were both in production. Aaron had been growing on both the backfield and the lower field, so they had already been tilled. I turned the rotation of a lot of the beds because it's more efficient for soil runoff.
soil.
Yeah, but other than that, so the lower and the upper field had been farmed before I moved here.
Okay.
For 2 years, Aaron was here. A year and a half or 2 years. Land, so because the land was already tilled. So.
Okay, all right.
Though I
And
did
how much acreage is out there?
The lower field?
Yeah.
The lower field is 300 by 100. That's 30,000 square feet, which is just
About 2/3 of the
which is about 3/4 of an acre, yeah,
Okay,
2/3 to
between that.
3/4 of an acre, and then the upper field is about 1/3 of an acre. It's 175 by 60.
Okay.
So it's just about a quarter of an acre. It makes a total of about 1 acre.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
of tillable land. But a lot of it's blocked by trees. In the upper half of this field, the sunlight is pretty bad and needs.
If you look out those windows,
Work.
you'll see some walnut trees. Aren't they walnuts?
They're all black walnuts, and there are some oak trees in there as well. They need work.
Yeah, you can see that they've got stuff growing all over them. The limbs are getting dangerously close to the Darling house. They're not doing Ethan any good.
Or the house or any, we had asked, but they said, I don't know who the tree, Brett, I think that Barbara had talked to, somebody had talked to somebody, that they just couldn't get, you guys couldn't, the town couldn't get to it. They said you were overwhelmed with tree work.
Yeah, it was Warren.
Warren, okay, overwhelmed with tree work and could not get to it.
But that should be on the short list of
Yeah.
things that need to be taken care of. We don't have any vested interest in those trees. We can show you pictures of the estate in the 19th century where it's all clear. So while we love the 2 trees in the Litchfield Turnpike side, anything here.
But we would mention that there
Plantings.
are historic bushes, trees and plantings
The
here.
plantings right out
So
here, there's a loss. and it
needs
got
to be
cut
taken
back a
care
lot.
of.
You can see that
You wouldn't just come in and do
You can see
whatever.
the little
Yes,
flowers
yes,
sticking up?
yeah.
That is probably over 100-year-old hydrangea out there. And it got cut unfortunately this past spring, but it's still alive. And there are other bushes out there, and Muffy can talk to this more. Around the property, there are a lot of historic plantings that need to be preserved.
Okay.
We've lost some already, and so we don't want to lose any more.
Okay,
It's partnership.
okay, great, thank you.
I'm gonna try to button my lip, so let's,
Just a note on the trees, there is one tree that is incredibly imminent that needs to be taken care of, is the ash tree that is on the corner. It is leaning over to the pig house and died thoroughly from the emerald ash borer, and it's essential that it's taken down because it could go down this winter.
How accessible is it?
To take down? Not. It's on a 45-degree angle, and so it needs to be professionally taken down. I couldn't
Is that the
ever.
one you
Yeah.
spoke about to me?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah, there's
can you get
other,
a vehicle
right,
back
and that's why unfortunately.
You can't drive a vehicle because it's over the septic tank.
So
Right,
he
you
said
have
they
to
were
worry about the septic.
overwhelmed.
Yep.
So I don't know if I could just ask you guys, is it possible just to get an outside contractor to do like tree work if the town people are overwhelmed, could there be an outside person?
We work with contractors
Yeah.
already. When Warren says he's overwhelmed, that's with the contractor.
With the contract.
Right, so that's what I'm wondering, can we do it?
So, but if it.
Well, I
if
think
there's
that's
a-
what we want to put that kind of on our list. then,
Exactly.
So
We
that
wanna
that
make sure
needs
they're aware of it
to
and-
be discussed.
Okay,
Okay.
and just for a lot of these trees, because of where they are, I don't think anybody can do it with a bucket.
No, that's why I was asking how accessible. With septic, there's also an opportunity in the winter, if the ground gets really hard for them to do some things with small vehicles, but we can see, so.
Sure.
Right.
We'll find out.
Watch Quince jam with their cheese board.
This one is pristine, was kept beautifully. The one next door
There's some
belonged to
discussion.
John J. Perkins'
We
daughter.
know that Darlene.
He was proud of that.
I mean, that's what
He
you.
was an interesting man. He started.
And it's knitted lace. This
The
lace.
reading glasses.
Yeah.
But the quality of the textiles allows them to survive all this time.
Right.
That's right.
You know, just the quality of the
We
material.
only
that
use
went in it.
lukewarm water, lukewarm, and then I take it out, and then I put fresh in, and I mean hours.
Oh, yeah.
And I put a bowl to keep it in, so, and then there is a very special soap called Restoration online, Amazon.com. Like that's what I mean, you dissolve it, after it's soaked and soaked and soaked, you dissolve this slowly. It has to be completely dissolved before you put anything in it, because you don't want a spot that would be brighter than another.
Right.
So then we put that in, and I soak another hour or two. And then I rinse and rinse and rinse, and I actually just hang it. The quality of this fabric, you hardly need to press. I do have a steamer, but one of the things that we were told is that you don't want to press a line in, because that helps deteriorate.
Yeah.
But on the whiteboard, one child on this board, one child and then there's this one over here, and the little child has to go like this.
But isn't this something to think about what it would have taken to
Now,
build
we
something?
know that when Thomas Darling built the house, he hired a free, he was,
Yeah, she's a cutie. Yeah. You showed him to sign it?
Simon helped me find it. Yeah. Me and Simon are really close.
Everybody wants to
No, I have kitties.
I have one now.
Not much reason to. You know, nobody was firing, well,
Sometimes you borrow one of these things you guys
She's smelling 5 other kitties.
The metal detector,
you're
right?
friendly.
Yes.
Well, all the other cats I go around are very nice.
here.
And then there's.
Sure. I totally understand that.
You smell pumpkin.
Okay, we got everybody, and the cat.
This might be Mr. Darling keeping an eye on
Discussion.
it. John, Paul, George, and Ringo were here, that's nice. This is the room I'm curious about, because I haven't received much attention.
Right, it should be 50 amp, or it should be, no.
It's electric, it's not plugged in. It's plugged.
Oh, really?
I'm sure the plug is somewhere there.
So beautiful little kitchen.
Yeah.
Just big.
Showing like 72, 75.
That's something.
Have you been upstairs, Tony? Two rooms and a bathroom. Bathroom probably needs some work. Well, there's a half down here.
Now, is that something that, I mean, to do it should be an outside electrician? I mean, you guys must have an electrician, but I don't know if that's something that.
So this was where the summer kitchen was. It's been renovated.
No, that looks like something that, I think
I
that
did this with a guy named Arnold Peterson. He
that
was
looks
from
like something
Bethany.
you bring somebody in.
And he used,
want to make sure
he used old tools in his
have to go to
business.
the panel.
So this bullnose molding here was done with a 18th century plane.
Right to this.
This is the way this guy worked. He was a real Yankee throwback.
Certified electrician
So
on
this
staff,
floor
and I don't know.
This
Yeah.
is not a,
But that, so
I don't know if
that's,
there are any original
Okay, so the
features of
six-
the
so I'm not talking
barn
about
that
the fire
this used to be a woodshed and a summer kitchen.
done in here.
Yes.
You look out, if you remember to look out on the back wall, you'll see two little flat things. Those are landing pads for bees, because they used to have hives in here before it was an apartment. We still have the hives, but the bees could come in, land on the pad and walk into their little house. So it was a barn before it was an apartment.
And
This was the barn.
This was the barn. You wouldn't know that before? No. Just telling Tony that outside, there's two little.
believe it. I don't believe it was. This is the last section that did not get
Come
worked
land and walk in the hive, we're in here when it's
And-
gone. Oh, really? They're still on the outside.
like inside, the hives are not.
flower.
According to the previous records of the Historical Society, came out of this, so this is wide board reproduction and newer, but they took that and moved that into, because that kitchen, that's the only floor in the house that was not.
What's the age of the carriage house?
But it's at least original to this building and
Probably
19th
the first
century.
quarter of the
and on the property,
1800s. We're not really positive. The beans certainly suggest that they're all locally grown stuff.
So maybe like 50 years after the house was built, or 40,
Maybe, yeah,
something
maybe,
like that?
yeah.
And just
These things were added, through, you know, the house stood by itself from 1770 till 1850. So it's a good chance that that barn may have been freestanding for a while. These other things came along at different times.
So what is actually in there?
That's,
And this side here,
space.
this side here, that's been built to cold storage.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
Used to be
And
a
then that's where the
little
lawnmower, you know,
Okay,
there's
it's
some
in there.
storage.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the opening was for the carriages and sleighs, but behind that, extending back, is the horse barn.
And
That
that's-
probably is about 1820, 1830.
Yeah, I think that's what Todd thought too, they thought like early 19th century, but that's an amazing, I don't know if you've been in there, but that's, I mean, that on its own, I don't know if
Little
they
money,
counted
it's up to you guys.
that. But
I wanted you to see
the barns themselves are amazing.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have a house connected to them, the barns themselves are awesome.
No, she's a
And the barns themselves, this side of the road and the other side of the road are of also particular concern to us, that they've been preserved rather than renovated and made into something else.
Right, no adapters
That
were used, not, I mean, that is.
We'll do.
I mean, people do that, so here's the,
try to have
people do
7
that a
kinds of
lot with barns.
Yes.
They make wedding venues, they do those sorts of things.
Right.
One is they're normally
It's a
the
big thing
late
in the Italian
19th
Yeah, oh, yeah.
century
You gotta have
barns
the
that
fish.
they're doing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
with. I mean, you
And
have
then
an
Christmas,
18th
you have the
century barn,
lasagna, you
don't
have
do that.
pastas.
But also, those are often structures that are so dilapidated in some way that they require so much work that it becomes more of a restoration and less of a preservation. And there's a, there's a big, huge difference. These can be preserved. I mean, they're, the one across the street needs some work soon, but they're in a state of preservation that's remarkable. And so you don't take that and put in electricity and put in a floor and put in a bathroom so that you can try to make a wedding venue that, nobody's going to want to be 3 feet from Litchfield Turnpike anyway.
Right.
So that's our concern is that, like for instance, I'll give you an example. North Guilford, they have a new farm there, the Dudley Farm. It's a 19th century house. They have an 1850s barn that they've restored, and the only thing in there, they're actually oxen from some farmer who's got like oxen or something. They went and got a dismantled late 19th century barn in Madison that was no longer standing. They put it up someplace else in the property. And yes, you can have that as an event. Weathersfield did the same thing, you know, farther off. So if somebody wants a venue, that's the way to go, but not taking these. You know, you can get dismantled barns all over the place, put it up across the street or wherever you want if that's the kind of thing you want to do, but not to these. You know, it shouldn't be part of the museum anyway, but not to these structures. That would be tragic.
Just a foam roller. Stretch your back.
Do we want to go?
Upstairs bedroom, I just went up there, so it won't fit a lot of people, so if you want to take a look real quick.
Okay, I'll do that.
Up there, look all right.
The floor is, the tiles are coming up, which usually indicates a little damp.
That's historically been a tough room to maintain. It gets wet and humid and damp.
Yeah, it's definitely damp. 'cause
Right
you can
before
see
it
the
last
tiles.
yeah.
We've rebuilt the window sash there.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's from, you know, but it looks like more from the sink, or maybe it's just humidity, but
It's, like I say, it's historically difficult. It's a small room, there's not a lot of headspace. It's not, is it vented? I can't remember. Like you throw a switch and it vents the,
I don't.
so, you know,
wonder if that would help.
you run a hot
Yeah, I
shower
think it
there,
might
that
be. I
stays
think that would help.
Well, we're gonna have bath and kitchen people in here if we do the grant.
Yeah, it is due, it's definitely due.
Every 4 years, that is a lot of
You
doing.
okay, big guy?
Should probably try to find,
Yeah, you should
Probably
need to,
try
yeah,
to
because it
find-
was totally.
something's up.
Something.
Things that, you know, should be looked at.
Well, that's the kind of thing where,
Get pricey or whatever.
I can walk the same, well, it's just standing up there.
they'll probably do some good work.
Absolutely.
Ed Oberg is a good.
You need someone who really can see.
We have a guy that knows this,
Yeah,
done
Ed
this work.
Oberg, he's done it at Don's house, he's